The colonists whispered in the dark. Something vast that prowled the tree, leaving claw marks on steel and shadows in their dreams. Children were told to stay close to the firelight. Mothers clutched makeshift blades, and men who once laughed at superstition now swore they heard it breathing beyond the walls. Lieutenant Mara Vera heard the whispers every night. From her bunk, she could make out fragments. Monster, eyes in the dark, beast that waits. She told herself it was fear feeding fear. Yet even she found her hand drifting to the rifle beside her mat before sleep. The jungle of Arivos, 9 was alive with threats. Giant insects that devour crops. Serpents that could swallow a settler whole. Predatory plants that disguised themselves as vines until someone brushed against them. It was natural to imagine worse things lurking just beyond sight. Still, the stories carried a tone of certainty that troubled her. At dawn, she walked the perimeter wall. The morning haze clung to the ground, tinted green by the canopy overhead. A few colonists stood guard, pale from lack of sleep. One nodded toward the jungle. "You here last night?" he asked. "I heard a dozen things," Mara replied, keeping her eyes on the tree. This was different. Heavy, like it wanted us to know it was there. She offered no comfort. It was better to let them speak and move on than feed panic with false assurances. The wall's edge dropped into a gully filled with broadleaf plants that gleamed with dew. Something unusual caught her eye, a shape too deliberate to be natural. She climbed down carefully, boots sinking into damp soil. It was a basket, rough woven, alien in design, filled with fruit she didn't recognize. Their skins glistened purple and orange, streaked with blue veins. She touched one cautiously. Cool, freshly picked. Her instinct was to call it in, but she hesitated. Colonists would see it as proof the monster toyed with them. Fear would turn into a frenzy. She examined the ground instead. No signs of struggle. No blood. Only faint prints, large, clawed, pressed deep into the soil. The tracks led away into the thick brush. Mara lifted the basket, heavier than it looked. She carried it back into the colony, hiding it inside a storage unit before anyone could notice. Later, in the mess hall, the mood was worse than usual. Food supplies were thin, the last shipment from Earth delayed by storms in orbit. Colonists picked at watery porridge, eyes sunken with exhaustion. One of the engineers muttered, "Saw claw marks on the storage shed. Things testing us. Next time it won't stop at scratches." Across the table, a farmer spat. "We're cattle in a pen. Sooner or later, it'll come over that wall." Mara set her bowl aside. "Fear won't keep it out. Neither will gossip. We work the patrols, reinforce the gates, and keep our heads clear. That's how we survive." Her words fell flat. They always did. Fear was louder than reason. At dusk, she met with Commander Erek, a grizzled man who had seen too many colonies rise and fail. He studied a map lit by a single lantern. Scouts report shot through an activity. He said, "Tapping the northern edge of the jungle. Our Corps' tribe is restless. They think we're trespassing on sacred ground." Mara frowned. We knew conflict was coming. The stories of the monster could be their doing. Keep us nervous, easier to push out. Or it's real, Erek said flatly. Either way, colonists are on edge. We need calm, not hysteria. She considered telling him about the basket, but held her tongue. He'd order it burned or locked away, and she needed to understand why it had been left in the first place. Night fell heavy. The jungle pulsed with sound, chirps, rustles, distant roars. Mara walked the perimeter again, rifle slung across her shoulder. Lanterns cast shifting shadows against the wall. Every creak, would made her finger twitch toward the trigger. She stopped near the gully where she'd found the basket. The plants moved as if disturbed, though no wind stirred. Her breath slowed. She listened. There was heavy steps, deliberate, pacing just beyond sight. Not the random crashing of an animal, but movement with intent. She crouched, peering through the leaves. A silhouette rose among the trees. Broad shoulders. A hunch frame. Light caught its face briefly. Scarred, fanged, eyes glowing amber. It carried something in its hands. Mara's pulse hammered, but she stayed still. The figure knelt at the wall's base. It set down another basket of fruit, adjusting it until it rested upright. Then it turned and melted back into the jungle, vanishing without sound. No attack, no roar, only a gift. Mara rose slowly, every instinct torn between disbelief and unease. She walked down into the gully and found the basket. Different fruits this time. Green pods that smelled faintly sweet, a cluster of round berries glowing faintly blue. She touched the handle. Still warm, as if from the creature's grip. Behind her, a colonist called, "Lieutenant? You see something?" She stiffened. "Nothing. Just checking the brush." The colonist shrugged and walked on. Mara stayed a moment longer, staring at the gift. Monster or not, it was watching them, and it wanted something. Back in her quarters, she locked the door and placed the basket side by side. The fruit gleamed under the light. She picked up one of the pods and pressed her thumb against its skin. It yielded easily, releasing a scent that filled the room, fresh, almost floral. Why leave food? Was it an offering? A warning? Or something else entirely? Mara leaned back against the wall, staring at the shadows stretching across the floor. The colonists feared a beast in the trees. She had seen something scarred and terrifying, yes, but not mindless. It hadn't attacked. It hadn't destroyed. It had given. The whispers of the colony echoed in her head. Monster. Killer. Beast. She closed her eyes. The truth was more complicated, and that made it far more dangerous. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would watch again. The jungle would not give up its secrets easily, but she intended to learn them before the whispers turned to screams. The colony's rations dwindled by the day. By the end of the week, the storerooms held only half of what had been logged at the start of the season. The last supply drop from orbit was still trapped above by storms, and hunger sharpened every whispered rumor into a blade. Mara listened as voices clashed inside the council hall. The room smelled of sweat, dust, and frustration. A farmer stood at the front, fists clenched. "We can't live off scraps and lies. That thing's circling us, bleeding us of courage. You think it leaves us alone out of kindness? It's waiting until we're weak." An engineer snapped back. "And your solution? Run into the jungle and starve faster?" Commander Erect raised his hand for silence. His tired eyes swept the crowd. "We strengthen the walls, set traps, and keep night patrols doubled. We hold until the next drop clears atmosphere. Discipline will keep us alive." Discipline, Mara thought, but fear eats discipline like rot through wood. When the meeting broke, she lingered at the edge. A young colonist stopped her near the door, eyes wide with exhaustion. "You've been on patrol more than anyone," he whispered. "You've seen it, haven't you?" Mara kept her face still. "I've seen tracks. Nothing more." He leaned closer. "It's clever. That's worse than claws or teeth. You don't fight clever." She brushed past him, unwilling to argue with dread. That night, she returned to the gully. Lantern light spilled unevenly across the wall, leaving black gaps where the jungle pressed close. She crouched in shadow, rifle at her side, eyes fixed on the undergrowth. The jungle pulsed with noise, insects shrilling, unseen creatures rustling through leaves. She waited. The minutes dragged like hours. Then movement. Branches shifted. A hulking silhouette emerged, shoulders stooped, face half hidden beneath scars. In its hands hung another basket. Mara's pulse quickened. She held her breath, forcing stillness. The figure stepped into the open, placed the basket carefully near the wall, and adjusted it with almost ritual precision. Then it turned. Amber eyes met hers through the gloom. Not a fleeting glance, but deliberate recognition. Mara's throat tightened. She didn't raise her rifle. She didn't move. The silence between them stretched thin as glass. Finally, the creature shifted back into the jungle, vanishing like smoke into darkness. Only then did she release the breath she'd been holding. The next morning, colonists found the basket. They gathered around it, arguing whether it was poison, trickery, or blessing. Mara stayed back, watching as Commander Rek ordered the fruit burned rather than consumed. The fire devoured the gift quickly, leaving only char and smoke. That night, new traps lined the gully. Crude snares, sharpened stakes, wires stretched between posts. Mara checked them herself, unease gnawing her. Whoever, or whatever, it was, it hadn't harmed them yet. To kill it outright felt wrong, like blinding themselves to a truth they didn't want to face. The traps lasted a single night. By morning, every one had been dismantled without triggering. Snares lay neatly coiled, wires wrapped around stakes, sharpened would set harmlessly aside. The colonists who found them paled, as if they had stumbled on witchcraft. "It's mocking us," one hissed. "It knows how to undo steel and rope. What kind of beast does that?" Mara said nothing, though a thought lingered in her chest. Not beast. Someone. By the third night, the colony's nerves were stretched raw. Arguments erupted at the smallest spark. Someone accused the cooks of hoarding food. Another claimed the guards slept through shifts. Fists flew in the mess hall until Commander Erect pulled them apart. Mara left the noise behind. Stepping into the night again, she walked the perimeter alone, lantern low, her boots pressed into damp soil, her rifle a quiet weight across her shoulder. At the gully, the air felt heavier. She crouched low, waiting. The undergrowth stirred. This time the figure emerged slower, more cautious. Its scarred head lifted, scanning the wall before lowering a basket brimming with pods and berries. Mara's hand tightened on her weapon, but she didn't raise it. Instead, she whispered into the dark, unsure if it would understand. "Why?" The figure stilled. For a moment, she thought it would retreat. Instead, it straightened, tall and broad. Its voice came rough, broken, like stone dragged across steel. "Survive." Her skin prickled. The word was alien, shaped differently, yet she understood. "Who are you?" she pressed, her voice barely louder than breath. The figure's head tilted. A low rumble passed its throat. No name. Monster. Exile. Before she could speak again, it melted back into the jungle. The leaves swallowed it whole. Mara remained kneeling in the gully, heart racing. The word echoed in her mind. Exile. At dawn, she stood before Commander Erect as he inspected the dismantled traps. His jaw tightened. "It's studying us. Mark my words, Lieutenant. This ends badly." She weighed her next words, then forced them out. "What if it's not the threat we think?" Erect turned, his glare sharp. "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "I believe fear blinds us. If it wanted us dead, we'd be dead." His expression hardened. "Fear keeps fools alive. Don't confuse mercy with strategy. Whatever it is, it's playing a game. And I won't have this colony gamble with lives." Mara bit back the truth she'd heard the night before. She wasn't ready to share it, not until she understood more. That evening, scouts returned with worse news. The Charthuan tribe had been sighted massing to the north, their war banners carried through the trees. HFY himself was said to lead them. "Humans trespass sacred soil," one scout reported, repeating words he had overheard. "They will cleanse it with fire." The council erupted in panic. Some demanded immediate retreat to the landing zone. Others shouted to fortify and prepare for war. Mara stayed quiet at the edge, her mind torn between two threats: the open hostility of the tribe and the shadow in the jungle whose gift she had begun to trust. When the meeting broke, she returned once more to the gully. She stood where the baskets had been left, her hand brushing the soil. The jungle watched in silence. Somewhere out there, the exile moved through the dark. The colonists whispered of a monster, but Mara's gut told her the truth was far more complicated. And complication, she knew, was more dangerous than fear. The jungle swallowed sound differently at night. It muffled some things, boots sinking into soil, branches brushing armor, while amplifying others, a frog-sharp cry, the distant boom of falling timber. Mara moved carefully, lantern hooded, rifle slung but ready. She wasn't on patrol tonight. This was her own choice, and secrecy was her only shield. At the gully she waited, pulse steady despite the darkness pressing around her. She had no basket to trade, no peace offering but curiosity. She replayed the word in her head, exile, and wondered what punishment could cast something so powerful into solitude. The brush stirred. She straightened, hand brushing her weapon. Then it emerged, tall and broad, shoulders scarred, eyes glowing faintly with reflected light. It carried nothing this time. Mara forced herself to speak before silence hardened into fear. You came back. The figure's head tilted. Its breath rasped. Hungry one still alive? Yes, she said, because of your fruit. It gave no answer, only studied her with an intensity that made the air heavy. She swallowed. You said exile. What'd you mean? A long pause. Then the voice, rough but clear enough to understand. Cast out. Tribe call me traitor. Monster. Not one of them. Not one of you. Mara stepped closer, careful not to startle. Why bring us food? Why risk yourself? The exile's gaze dropped briefly, as if the question was difficult. I see young, small human, thin, dying. Remind me. Its chest rose and fell sharply. Remind me of mine. Mara's throat tightened. Your child. The exile gave a low growl that was not anger but grief. Taken. Tribe kill. Said, weak blood, not warrior. The weight of those words pressed against her. She saw the scarred figure not as a monster, but as a parent hollowed by loss, clinging to something fragile. I'm sorry, she whispered. The exile's head turned sharply, as though unaccustomed to pity. It rumbled. You not fear me? I did, she admitted. But fear isn't the same as truth. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the chirp of insects. Then the exile spoke again. War comes. Sharthuan gather. Our HFY leads. He burn all. Mara stiffened. You've seen them? The exile nodded once, slow. I know his banners. Know his fury. He hates outsiders. Hates me. Her pulse quickened. Then you're telling me this because I do not want your small ones burned. I want HFY ended. The words landed like stone dropped in water, rippling outward. She searched his face for deception, but found only scars and exhaustion. You would fight against your own tribe? Not mine, the exile said with iron in his tone. Not anymore. The next morning, Mara's report to Commander Erect was half-truth. She spoke of scouts spotting tribal movement, of increased risk, of the need to prepare. She did not mention the exile. Not yet. Erect narrowed his eyes. You look like you've seen more than shadows. I've seen enough to know we're running out of time, Mara replied. He studied her, then finally nodded. Then we sharpened blades and steady hands. Panic will do our HFY's work for him. By evening, word spread that food was scarcer than ever. Families whispered of leaving the colony for the landing site, though storms still blocked escape. Children cried in hunger, and hope thinned like smoke. Mara carried their faces with her when she slipped back into the jungle once more. The exile was waiting this time, crouched in the shadows. Beside him rested another basket of fruit. You risk coming again, Mara said quietly. The exile's teeth bared in something not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. Risk, nothing left to lose. She crouched across from him, close enough to see the faded burned scars across his forearm, the jagged ridges carved into his skin by old battles. Tell me about our HFY. The exile's voice lowered, almost a growl. Our HFY's war chief. He believes strength comes only from blood spilled. He drove me out when I said no, that small ones must be protected, not culled. Mara felt her stomach turn. He killed your child to prove a point. The exile's eyes flared with remembered rage. He kills to remind all that mercy is weakness. She studied him. And you want him gone? Yes. The answer came with no hesitation. Mara let the thought settle. To trust him was dangerous. To ignore him might be deadlier. If we help each other, maybe both our people survive. The exile leaned forward, massive hands resting on the ground. You trust me, human? Not yet, she admitted. But I trust what I've seen. You had chances to kill us. Instead, you brought food. The exile gave a slow nod, something like respect flickering in his gaze. On the fourth night, Mara returned with a small gift of her own, a metal canteen filled with water purified by colony filters. She placed it in the dirt between them. Trade, she said. The exile took it, lifted it to his mouth, and drank deeply. When he lowered it, his voice rumbled softer. You're kind, different from Sharthuan. You build walls. Protect young. Strange. But good. Mara managed the faintest smile. Maybe not so different after all. He touched the canteen with a claw, careful not to pierce it. Name. Give me name. She blinked. You want mine? Yes. Mara, she said. The exile repeated it slowly, shaping the sound with difficulty. Mare. She hesitated, then asked, and you? Long silence. Then, almost reluctantly, Kale. The name settled heavy in the night air. Not monster. Not exile. Kale. When Mara returned to the colony, she carried Kale's name like a secret fire. She told no one. Not yet. The people still spoke of the monster in hushed voices, still flinched at shadows. To reveal the truth now might spark more fear than trust. But as she lay awake that night, listening to the storm batter the roofs, she knew one thing clearly. When war came, Kale would not stand against them. He would stand with them. And that, perhaps, could make all the differ. The first plumes of smoke appeared at dawn, thin columns rising in the distance, smudging the sky with warning. By noon, scouts confirmed what Mara already feared. HFY's war bands were burning clearings closer to the colony, forcing prey animals into panic and marking their territory with fire. The council hall roared with voices. Some demanded evacuation toward the landing zone. Others insisted the walls could hold. Commander Erect silenced them with a raised hand. We don't run, he said. Storms still choke the sky. If we leave the walls, we die in the jungle. We fortify. We prepare. Mara kept her expression still. Inside, unease burned. The Sharthuan weren't careless raiders. They were disciplined, brutal, and HFY's reputation made even seasoned warriors pale. Fortify would buy time, but not victory. When the meeting ended, Erect caught her by the arm. His eyes narrowed. You've been holding something back. I see it in you. Mara forced her tone steady. I've been careful with what I report, but not dishonest. His gaze lingered a moment before he let her go. Don't mistake silence for strategy, Lieutenant. Secrets cost lives. She left without answering, her chest tight. That night, she slipped again to the gully. Kale was waiting crouched low, his scar frame barely visible against the dark. They come closer, he said without preamble. Yes, Mara replied. We saw the fires. Kale's jaw tightened. HFY drives him fast. He wants fear before blades. Mara studied him. You know his mind. Kale's amber eyes glowed faintly. I fought beside him. I saw his cruelty. He laughs when prey begs. The words chilled her. She lowered her voice. We can't hold them off alone. Even with our weapons, their numbers. She stopped, meeting his gaze. You said you wanted him ended. Do you mean to fight with us? Kale gave a slow nod. Yes, I want his fire quenched. But your people, his hand clenched, they will not trust me. He wasn't wrong. Mara pictured the colonists, already fraying under hunger and fear, to reveal that the monster they whispered about stood willing to fight at their side. It could break them before the first arrow flew. Then we keep it between us, she said finally, until the moment matters. Kale inclined his head, the faintest sign of agreement. The next day, Mara stood watch on the walls. The jungle beyond seemed alive, every shadow a possible scout. Children peered from doorways, their eyes too wide for their age. She forced herself to keep steady, if only to give them something solid to look at. A runner climbed the ladder breathless. Commander wants all officers, now. In the hall, maps were spread across the table. Stones marking enemy sightings. Erect's voice was hard. They'll reach us in 2 nights, maybe less. Every able hand will fight. Arguments flared about rationing, about weapon supply, about the wounded. Mara listened, but her mind drifted to Kale. She imagined his strength against HFY, the way his knowledge of the tribe could turn the tide. Yet still she kept silent. After the meeting, she lingered. Erect noticed. You doubt me. I doubt our chances, Mara admitted. He studied her. You speak like someone who's seen a path we haven't. If you know something, tell me. Her tongue pressed hard against the truth, but she held it. We can't outmatch them. but maybe we can outthink them. Irek's eyes narrowed. Then think fast, Lieutenant, because in 2 nights the walls will burn. When dusk fell, Mara returned to Kale. He waited by the gully, silent until she spoke. They'll be here in 2 nights. Kale's jaw flexed. Then we strike first. Mara frowned. You mean leave the walls? His head tilted. Walls trap you. Fire eats walls. Forest eats warriors. Use the jungle. She considered it. Ambush, traps, using the terrain to their advantage. It was risky, but less suicidal than waiting behind wooden barricades while fire and arrows rained down. What do you suggest? She asked. Kale lowered his voice. There's a ravine east of here. Narrow path. Only few warriors can cross at once. We lure them, break them piece by piece. Mara imagined it. Guerrilla strikes, bottlenecking their numbers. It could work, but convincing the colony to abandon the walls would be near impossible. I'll try, she said. Kale's gaze lingered on her. If they refuse, I fight anyway. The following morning, Mara presented the plan. She spoke of bottlenecks, of using terrain against superior numbers. Some scoffed, others listened. Irek's face was carved from stone. You would lead our people into the jungle at night, into ground we barely know. Mara held her ground. Into ground they know less. The Sharthuan expect to burn us out. If we make them fight where fire dies, we control the fight. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Irek studied her a long moment, then finally said, You'll lead the strike. Fail, and it's on your head. She inclined her head, understood. That night, she returned to Kale with the news. They agreed. We move tomorrow. Kale's shoulders shifted, almost a sigh of relief. Good. Then you have chance. Mara hesitated, then asked, If we succeed, what then? You can't return to your tribe, and my people may never accept you. Kale looked toward the colony's faint lights. I do not fight for acceptance. I fight to end our HFY. After, we see. For the first time, Mara let herself smile. Then let's make sure there's an after. The day before the battle, the colony worked in tense silence. Weapons sharpened, supplies packed light. Children were hidden in the deepest shelters. Mara stood on the wall as dusk bled into night. She scanned the jungle, searching for signs of movement, of smoke, of fire. The silence before war was always the loudest. A voice rose from below. One of the colonists, a wiry farmer, pointed toward the tree line. There, look! Shapes moved between the trees. Dozens, then more, torches bobbing like stars. The Sharthuan had arrived. Mara's hand gripped her rifle. Tomorrow, they would march into jungle, trusting a path shown by an exile the colony still called Monster. If they failed, no one would live to argue about it. But deep in her chest, she held a conviction stronger than fear. Kale would stand with them, and that, perhaps, was enough. The jungle at dawn was a shroud of mist and silence. Mara led the column along narrow paths, every bootfall muffled in damp soil. The colony's fighters moved with grim focus, weapons clutched tight, breath measured. Behind them lay the walls they had abandoned. Ahead, the ravine Kale had spoken of. She carried no map, only trust in his memory. When the land dipped and the trees thinned, she saw it, a gash in the earth where stone and roots formed sheer sides, a choke point fit for an ambush. The colonists spread along the ridge, crouched behind fallen logs and brush. The youngest among them trembled, but the sight of Mara steadying her rifle calmed some fear. She whispered instructions, making each man and woman feel seen. Then came the wait. Torches flared in the distance. Sharthuan voices rose, guttural chants pounding like drums. The war band advanced, dozens strong, their painted bodies streaked with ash and blood. At their head strode HFY, towering, armored in hide and bone, carrying a blade broad as a man's chest. His presence bent the air itself, every step a promise of ruin. Mara signaled. The first volley snapped from rifles, bolts and bullets tearing into the front ranks. Sharthuan howled, stumbling into the ravine, pressing forward in fury. Hold! Mara shouted, keeping her fighters from firing too fast. The jungle filled with screams and gunfire, smoke choking the air. The bottleneck worked. The war band stalled, their numbers forced into narrow ground. But for every warrior that fell, 2 more pressed in. The colonists fought with desperate resolve, yet Mara saw in their eyes exhaustion, the line fraying. Then the trees behind the Sharthuan exploded. Kale tore from the undergrowth like a storm, his massive frame slamming into warriors with bone-crushing force. His roar shook the ravine, primal and furious. Claws ripped spears aside, his fists cracked armor like twigs. The colonists froze. The whispers of a monster were suddenly flesh and blood before them. Fear surged, until Kale's charge drove back the enemy instead of them. Mara's voice cut the confusion. With him. Fight with him. It was enough. Hesitation turned into a rallying cry. The colonists poured fire into the ravine while Kale carved a path through the warriors, scattering them like dry leaves. HFY's bellow rose above the chaos. He locked eyes on Kale, recognition twisting his face into rage. Exile. His voice thundered. I should have finished you with the weaklings. Kale's answer was a roar that shook the canopy. He waded through bodies toward the war chief. Mara fired into the crowd, clearing Kale's path. Go, she shouted. End him. The duel tore the battlefield apart. HFY swung his massive blade in brutal arcs, each strike cleaving bark from trees, scattering dirt and sparks. Kale met him head-on, claws catching steel, bodies straining with the impact. Their blows cracked the air like thunder, each collision a contest of will as much as strength. The colonists and Sharthuan alike slowed their fighting to watch. It was more than a battle. It was judgment. HFY sneered between strikes. You shame your blood, Kale. You fight beside prey. Kale shoved the blade aside and drove his fist into HFY's chest, forcing him back a step. I fight for the young, for life. You kill because you fear weakness. The words carried, reaching even the colonists pressed against the ridge. Mara saw their faces shift. The monster they feared was speaking their creed. HFY lunged, blade raised high. Kale caught it barehanded, claws digging into steel, blood spilling down his arms. With a roar, he twisted, snapping the weapon free and sending it crashing into a ravine wall. HFY stumbled, stunned. Kale struck. Once, twice, a final blow that crushed the war chief into the earth. Silence fell. Then the Sharthuan broke. Leaderless, their chants shattered, they scattered into the jungle, leaving the dead behind. The battle was over. Mara lowered her rifle, chest heaving. Around her, colonists stood dazed, weapons slack in their hands. Their eyes turned, almost as one, to Kale. He stood over HFY's broken body, blood streaking his scars, breath ragged. When he lifted his head, their gazes met, not with defiance, but with weary expectation. It was Mara who stepped forward first. She raised her voice, steady despite the chaos still ringing in her ears. He fought with us. He saved us. She swept her gaze across the colonists. This exile is no monster. His name is Kale. The silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then the farmer who had once spoken fear whispered, almost against himself, Kale. Another repeated it. Then another. The name spread through the group, reshaping the whispers that had once condemned him. Kale's shoulders lowered. For the first time since she'd met him, Mara saw something in his eyes beyond grief and fury, something like belonging. By nightfall, the dead were buried and the wounded tended. The colony sat in wary quiet, but the air was no longer thick with despair. They had survived the war chief's fire. Mara found Kale standing apart, gazing into the jungle. She approached, boots crunching softly. You stayed, she said. His voice was low. You gave me reason. She studied the silhouette, the scars, the strength. They'll never see you as human, but maybe they'll see you as ally. Kale turned slightly, amber eyes catching the faint firelight. That is enough. Mara allowed herself a rare smile. You're not alone anymore. For a long time, neither spoke. The jungle hummed with night, but the colony stood whole. And for the first time since landing on this world, Mara believed they might not just endure, but build something greater. because they were not just humans in the dark, and Kale was not just an exile. Together, they had turned fear into fire, and fire into survival.